are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show. Welcome to another Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul.
How you doing, everybody? Happy Monday.
Tell us what. Tell us what the opinion is.
Okay, well, here's what I think. I think that there's a tool out there that we're not using enough in business or even in life that will help you get it right every time, help your team get it right every time, and that is the checklist. So the reason that this matters to you in business is that there are probably things that you do throughout the day that have become an extreme frustration for one of two reasons. Either it's a trouble spot for you in business, right? So something that you're just constantly missing, you're missing a step or something's going wrong. Or it's maybe a system or procedure that's the single most important predictor of success in business. Okay, so those are two areas where we look, where if you used this tool called the checklist, is kind of the most simple and basic tool. I know right now what you're thinking.
Amy, we are talking about a checklist. As simple as that is, I guarantee you that almost every single person in business could be using more checklists in their lives to reduce frustration in their business, in their lives, even at home.
And increase results.
Yeah.
So there's those two pieces to the puzzle. Decrease frustration, increase results. All right, we're going to give you a personal example to start off with. One of our single most used checklists in our business is our presentation checklist. We bring it with us to every single presentation we do, every keynote, every training, anything where we are live at an event presenting to other people. And this is a checklist that we have come to learn to rely on because we've made the mistake too many times, right?
Oh, totally.
Of not having that checklist or having it and not going through it. Because look, when you do something in your business again and again and again and again, you can build up this false belief that you're really good at it, right? And so you think like, oh, I've got this because I do it all the time. But the reality is we have found and we have proven to ourselves that if we do not review the checklist together and actually go through and check off one by one, inevitably, we will be missing something. And usually it's one of the bigger things. Okay, so for us, that's the presentation checklist. Everything from our audio visual needs, the emails that need to be written in advance, working with the venue to make sure we have everything set up, down to making sure, this is ridiculous. We put things in as simple as, make sure we have some flip-flops for Heather because she will have been standing in her high heels for however long, depending on how long the presentation is. And at the end of that session, I can barely walk and need some relief for my feet. So literally,
we've got snacks in there. We've got a list for like ibuprofen and just things that you need that as you go through and throughout the years that we've been doing this, we've learned that we need to add this. We're like, we got to add that to the checklist because to forget it, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And what's really great now is that checklist for us provides such a level of confidence. There's no stress. And when I'm, going to sleep the night before a big program, I don't have to second guess or question, do we have this or do we have that? I am 100% certain that we have everything we need. So think about that. In part, it's just you can get better sleep at night if you have the proper checklist and you know how to use it. Now, I can think of what some of you are probably thinking as you listen to this is that, oh, well, a checklist for something like doing a keynote speech or a presentation or training, that's one thing, but my job's a lot more difficult than yours. And it's too complicated that I couldn't possibly use a checklist because there are too many different scenarios. And I'm really going to push back on that one because I believe that about 80% of what we do, no matter how complicated, how technical, can be created into a system that looks like a checklist. So let's just talk for a minute about, who was it? Dr. Atul Gawande. He wrote a book called The Checklist Manifesto, and it's actually written for surgeons. But I read this book years ago, and
thank God for that.
Yeah, right. I mean, please tell me that my surgeon has a checklist.
Yeah, prior to that book, I hope they're making checklists.
Well, the reality was they weren't, and they still aren't in many cases in different areas of healthcare. They're not using these checklists. But let me tell you some of the things that he wrote about in this book. So even though it's written for surgeons, it applies to every one of us in business, because you will recognize the same way a pilot would never, ever take off in an airplane without using their checklist, or a construction company would never consider building a home without using a checklist. I would think that just because those couple of industries have made it the norm doesn't mean that they're the only industries who can benefit from it. I mean, come on, it's really basic and simple that Dr. Gawande found this. When they were just researching one of the standard procedures that they were doing, right? And it had something to do with a catheterization, and from what I remember. And they were looking at the steps involved in this procedure. Mm-hmm. And they studied for 1 month all the patients where they did this particular procedure. And they found that in 1 month's time, in 1/3 of the patients, they missed at least one step.
Wow.
1/3 of the patients. So they went from infection rates of 11% to 0% when they implemented this simple checklist. These are really smart people. It's not like they don't know what they're doing, but just like I said, it's sometimes the things that we do the most often where we just forget things at times.
Well, you know, and Amy, who's on with us, you know, she wrote, I literally wake up in the middle of the night with random thoughts that I have to write down.
Yeah. How many other people feel exactly like Amy does? And it is so true. So if you start thinking about those areas of life where this happens for you, for me, when I was a practicing attorney, that would happen a lot, because I'd have these thoughts, these moments of, oh my gosh, did I miss this deadline? Or did I write this down? Or did I calendar this? And it was so stressful because the high level of importance for meeting deadlines was really critical. So be thinking about what those areas of your life are. They tend to be the same kinds of things over and over. Anytime you can find something that you do on a regular basis, that is a candidate for a checklist.
Yes. And so for a perfect example, last Facebook Live, I know all of you watched it, and I have everything set up, and I'm so proud of our studio. We have the lighting right, we have the soundboard, we have the microphones now, we have everything that we need to produce, I think, a quality show.
Paul keeps upping our game and adding some.
And so I'm so happy and so proud of myself. So we fire up the Facebook Live last week Monday, and it goes, and I'm like, oh yes, that was really good. We did a good one. And so then we always play it back to just watch it to just do our LBNT, our
which is another
next
checklist.
Time, which is a checklist. Yeah. And I'm like, why is her microphone not working? And I'm just I just can't believe it, because it just frustrates me so much when something doesn't work, especially when I put the time and effort in to make sure that it does. Well, I did not have a checklist for this production. So when I finished up, when I heard that the microphone wasn't working, I looked over at the soundboard right here, and sure enough, the cord was unplugged from it, because I was using it for only one microphone for one shooting that we were doing, and I never plugged it back in. So Heather immediately says, we need to put a checklist together for that. And it just frustrated me for her just to say that. But I realized, yes, we do need a checklist. And it is for everything, just to take, if there's a lot of steps, I would say if there's anything more than 4, maybe.
Anything more than 4? Yeah.
Because I was going to say 5 steps. Yeah.
Anything more than 4. But depending on the level of importance in your business, maybe even that 4 steps. So think about this. That one, we should have known. In fact, we did know that we should have had a checklist before, but so many things have changed with the different setup, and then that soundboard and all that. Yeah. And you know what it made me think of? It made me think of that scene from Airplane where the guy takes the landing lights and is unplugging them and laughing. That's what I thought when you were holding that cord up. Oh, I felt so bad for you. But he did, in all his frustration in the moment, sat down and like scribbled out the checklist step by step by step by step. And let me just tell you why else that's valuable. Because if for some reason you didn't show up one day to get this setup done, I would not have the first clue what to do with the soundboard, how to turn it on, how to get the microphones going. Not a clue on any of that. I know just the basics, but that thing with all those knobs, no idea.
Yeah, and outside of our own frustration being the number one reason that you use it, just to eliminate the frustration personally, the second thing is that if you're not there, or if I'm not there, that it can actually happen, that there is a checklist, that somebody isn't calling.
Yeah, exactly. So creating checklists.
Job security.
Job security.
If I don't write a checklist, it's job security, right? You need me then.
And how many people actually have that thought going on? Well, if I wrote the checklist, then people would see how easy it is to do this task, and then anyone could do it, and then they wouldn't need me. And I'd be like, well, thank God they don't need you, because every time you do that, you make yourself redundant in a good way. That allows you to move up into another position, that allows you to take on more responsibility. So, really be thinking about how much time could you shave off your day or your week or your month if you took the top time-consuming tasks, top frustrating tasks, and figured out what pieces of those tasks could be checklisted, right? Because you can actually take something, break it down into a smaller chunk, and then create the checklist from there.
Right.
So think about one of my all-time favorite checklists in any business. Ready for this one? It's the sales process. And do you know how many businesses we come across? I don't care how small or even the really, really huge ones that do not have a simple and straightforward enough checklist, and they're not testing and measuring the results in the step-by-step sales process. And firsthand, because you have experienced that frustration yourself.
I am shocked to find out how many, and I know just in my experience alone, I worked for at least 5 different companies in sales that did not have a written sales process. One, that when I started with them, that they said, this is the way we do it. This is how we do a step-by-step process to sale, from start to finish to close. And I never even knew what a sales process was going through it. And I worked for a couple of small companies. I worked for some medium-sized companies, and then I worked for a large company that most of you would all know that did not have a sales process on how. They literally just threw the salespeople out there, and it's just
go do it.
Yep.
They teach you. So what they do is they teach you the product or service.
Right. We knew the products inside and out, but not how to position and sell.
So let me give you one example of a checklist within a sales process. Would be the questions that you would ask your customer to find whatever their dissatisfaction is.
Yeah.
The questions that you would ask to find out what their needs are and what their aspirations are. So if you don't have go-to questions, and by the way, if you're not using the same questions for all the prospects, you can't really tell what's working and what's not working. So if you show up at one sales call and you ask these kinds of questions and you're successful, and you show up at the next sales call and you ask different questions and you're successful, you're not going to know what made it happen.
Right.
And if you lose one of those two, you're also not going to know why, but you're probably not going to go back and blame it on the fact that you've been inconsistent in using your sales process. What are you going to do? You're going to say, oh, that prospect, he just wasn't the right prospect, or she just didn't get it, right? Because it's easier to deflect than to...
Yeah, I mean, checklists are key, and they're called processes, they're sales, they're systems, but however you want to call them, they are absolutely necessary in business, and they can make your life much easier. It takes your mind, once you get the list down and you have it in front of you, and you can put it in Google Docs, you can put it anywhere where you can reference it. I always have them on my desk, especially for the speaking one that we do, that we're going to be speaking tomorrow. So I have that list for us to make sure that we have everything. And when I don't have that list in other situations, it drives me crazy. Yeah.
Well, and I think that is when we see inconsistency come out. That is when we see. And so if you want to really, really increase your consistency, get your team to start writing checklists for pieces of their job, right? What are the most important aspects of the job? What are the pieces, the tasks that they're doing that are producing the top results from any given role? And let me share one of my all-time favorite checklists. This is something we do with every organization that we're working with in a higher level coaching capacity. And that's called the functional chart. And there are probably many of you who hear that term and you're like, I have no idea what a functional chart is. Most people, when they think about an organization and the tasks, the positions within an organization, they think about an organizational chart. And in any given situation, when I say, hey, do you have a functional chart? And then I describe what it is, they say, oh, we have an org chart. Let me send it to you. And then they'll send me an org chart, which looks like exactly what you're picturing in your mind, where you've got, the CEO, and then you've got all the different departments, but it's like the names in the box and the titles. So that's the name and the title. And that is an organizational chart. That shows me basically reporting relationships. A functional chart is different. A functional chart is where you go at creating a chart for your business, but you're not entering boxes with names and titles. You're entering the function in the box. Now, I remember when I first learned this years ago, I didn't really get it, right? Because my mind thought in terms of this organizational chart. Well, you think about the title of the person, and then you think about what they do. And really, if you think about it, you forget all the people and you just say, what functions are needed to make my business run? Well, let's see, we have this finance function, and we definitely need that to make the business run. And then you list under the finance function the different responsibilities for that function. Well, the financial person has to make sure that they do all the invoices and all the accounts receivable. They have to make sure that they do the accounts payable. They have to process payroll, and so on and so on and so on. You're listing the top responsibilities of each function. And if you can do that function by function in the business, all the functions needed to make your business run successfully, then and only then do you go back once it's all complete and start putting initials next to the boxes, next to the tasks. And what we have found across the board, whether we're doing it for ourselves or we're doing it for someone else, that you will find areas where you have no initials to put in. And it's a major function in the business, but it's not being handled. Or you'll find a lot of times where you have multiple initials being put in, which means no one's really responsible for it. They're going like this, like, well, no, he's got that, she's got that. So it is so eye-opening. It really helps you. If anybody's ever saying, we don't know when the right time is to hire this next person, well, you got to go to the functional chart, and you've got to look at the critical roles in the business to make the business run and where those openings are. Do you have someone who can cover or not? So it's amazing for accountability.
So if you want to make your life much easier, frustration-free, start making checklists for yourself, both personally and professionally. And if you want to start to eliminate frustrations with employees and people saying, well, you really need me for this particular thing, have them put checklists together so that if they're sick or if they're on vacation, that you can still do the job that's necessary.
That was a really good wrap up. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Evolve to Win show. It's been great being with you. And, we do this show every single week for the purpose of helping all of you out there navigate through these especially busy times. And we know that things are so busy these days at work that half the time you're just trying to keep up with the normal day job, let alone all the change that's coming at you. So every week we're looking to bring you value and give you some ideas of how your life can be made just a little bit easier, a little less frustrating, and or a little bit more successful. So if you liked this episode, please share it. And if you've got any thoughts about what you'd like to hear, or if you have any frustrations in business that are just driving you nuts, you can send us a private message or leave us a note here. We always take a look at them and we appreciate your feedback. So with that, have an awesome day.
Have a great day.
Take care.
A great week.
And a great week.
Bye now.